She woke up every morning with the same feeling, the weight of an entire world pressing on her shoulders, and only a $1 coin to survive. The streets were her office, the hurried glances of strangers painted the backdrop of her days, and the emptiness in her stomach was the cruel reminder that life seemed to offer her nothing more than the daily fight to stay alive. Every cent was a battle, between bread for the day and the fragile hope that maybe, at the next sunrise, things would be different. But the truth was, nothing changed. Her routine was dry, suffocating, and it felt like there was no way out. Along with this pain, she carried the invisible weight of shame. Shame of being seen as someone who had failed. Shame of asking for help. Shame of looking in the mirror and no longer recognizing the woman who once dreamed of conquering the world. Her heart raced, not only from the fear of not having food, but also from the despair of being forgotten. The applause was gone. The recognition was gone. All that was left was silence. The nights were even more cruel. Lying on a worn-out mattress, she felt the tears wetting her face as she whispered, "Why me? Will life never give me a chance?" Her questions dissolved into the darkness, yet inside her they echoed loudly, reminding her at every second that her reality was shaped by limits, by lack, and by fear. And still, hidden deep inside her chest, there was a spark that refused to die. A quiet voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was not the end of her story. It was as if life was preparing something greater, but keeping it in silence, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. Have you ever felt this too? That paradox of being surrounded by darkness, and yet holding on to a secret flame that insists there is still hope? While her body barely survived with so little, her soul was fighting a bigger battle, the battle to keep hope alive. This was the part of her journey when everything seemed impossible, when even dreaming had become a distant luxury. But what she didn't know was that, inside her deepest pain, transformation was already being born. Because it's always this way, before the breakthrough, comes the fall. Before the light, comes the darkest night. And this was her night. But something was about to happen. Something that could change everything. Do you believe that words can transform destinies? Because that is exactly what changed the life of this woman who once survived on only $1 a day. And this is the story I want to share with you. The days repeated like an endless cycle. She would wake up, count the coins, and walk the streets searching for any chance to earn just one more dollar. Her body was already exhausted, her soul even more so. The feeling of being trapped in an unchanging reality was suffocating. She looked around and saw people living, smiling, fulfilling their dreams, while she could barely secure her next piece of bread. The cold of the night made her tremble, not only because there were no blankets, but because there were no perspectives. And every time she reached out for help, she received nothing but indifferent glances, as if she were invisible. The pain wasn't just physical, it was emotional, it was spiritual. It was the pain of feeling erased in a world that didn't seem to care. She remembered the dreams she once had. Dreams of studying, of traveling, of building a family, of living in a home filled with light and warmth. But life seemed to have ripped those dreams away, leaving only an emptiness accompanied by unanswered questions. Was I born to live like this? Am I going to spend the rest of my life counting coins and surviving on crumbs? And yet, even wounded, her heart kept beating. It kept waiting. It kept begging for a chance to change. How many times had she cried in silence, wishing that someone would see her, that someone would believe in her? Maybe you felt this way too, lost, forgotten, trapped in a reality that doesn't seem to change. Maybe you've looked up to the sky and asked, how much longer do I have to live with this pain? If this part of the story has already touched your heart, write the word miracle in the comments. That will be your way of declaring that you believe something greater can happen in your life too. And while you're here, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next stories that can transform the way you see life. Share this video with someone who also needs to be reminded that there is always hope. Because even when it seems there's no way out, life finds a way to surprise us. There were days when she felt completely invisible. She walked the streets, passed through crowds, yet no one noticed her. Rushed footsteps, eyes that turned away, hearts that stayed closed. It was as if she didn't exist. And that feeling of invisibility hurt more than hunger. Hunger could be eased with a piece of bread, but loneliness and the absence of recognition felt like wounds without a cure. She remembered the days when she still had strength to smile, even in the middle of hardship. Today, even a smile felt like an enormous effort. Her face reflected her exhaustion, her eyes revealed sleepless nights, and her voice carried the weight of someone who no longer believed she was worthy of being heard. Everything in her cried out for help, but no one seemed to listen. Doors kept closing one after another. She searched for work, but always heard the same answer: no openings. She tried selling small items on the street, but few were interested. The money never lasted, and her hopes crumbled. And every "no" she received felt like a confirmation that there was no place for her in this world. Have you ever felt like that? As if everything was conspiring against you, as if every attempt was just another reminder that nothing ever works out? With each passing day, the feeling of failure grew heavier. She compared herself to others and asked, why does it work for them but not for me? Comparison was like an open wound that never healed. Deep inside, she began to believe that maybe she truly didn't deserve a better life. There were nights when she looked in the mirror and could hardly recognize the reflection staring back. The light in her eyes had vanished, replaced by a deep shadow of sorrow. And in that reflection, she saw a woman who no longer knew who she was, a woman who no longer knew how to dream. But even while drowning in so much pain, something within her still resisted. It was small, almost invisible, but it was there. A timid desire to believe that maybe there was something beyond all that suffering. This is the silent battle many people fight every single day. The battle to keep going, even when everything seems lost. And the question echoes, have you ever felt that pain? The pain of being invisible, forgotten, rejected by the world? Her emptiness wasn't only material, it was emotional too. She felt alone, abandoned, as if she had been left behind in a race that everyone else seemed to be winning, except her. The nights were long and cold, and her thoughts grew even heavier when darkness filled her improvised room. In those moments, her deepest fears would surface, the fear of never leaving that situation, the fear of never being loved, the fear that her life would end exactly the way it was, without change, without purpose. She remembered her childhood days, when she dreamed of becoming someone important. She dreamed of helping her parents, of achieving great things, of proving to the world that she could rise. But now, as an adult, reality told a different story. She had become living proof that dreams could be crushed by circumstances. And that memory was too painful to carry. Silence was her greatest enemy. On the days when there was no one to talk to, her mind became a labyrinth of unanswered questions. What did I do wrong? Where did I get lost? Has God forgotten me? These questions cut deeper than any physical need. Have you felt that too? That feeling of carrying unanswered questions, of trying to make sense of pain and finding no meaning? At times, she believed the universe had condemned her to a life of scarcity. She couldn't see a way out, no doors opening. It was as if she were trapped in an invisible prison, one built of limitations, rejections, and failures. And yet, within that darkness, there was a curious detail. Every time she thought of giving up, a small reminder of hope would appear, a phrase she once heard, the memory of an old smile, a fragment of faith. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep despair from destroying her completely. And maybe it's the same for you. Maybe, even on your hardest days, there is something inside you that refuses to die. A flame, a spark, a voice that keeps insisting, it's not over yet. That inner battle was the only thing keeping her on her feet. And though she didn't know it, every tear, every question, every moment of pain was quietly paving the way toward an unexpected turning point. But for now, all she knew was the weight of sadness and the chill of uncertainty. The days became an endless sequence of failed attempts. She would leave early in the morning with the little she had, searching for new ways to earn some money, but always returned with almost empty hands. The weight of defeat kept piling up in her heart. It felt as if the world rejected her every single day, confirming that there was no place for her anywhere. Her clothes were worn out, her shoes full of holes, and even her posture revealed the exhaustion of someone carrying far more than just bags. She was carrying the weight of her own life, marked by failures. She walked with her head down, avoiding glances, as if she wanted to disappear. Deep inside, she believed it might be easier if she didn't exist at all. With every rejection, with every door that closed, another piece of her dreams shattered. Her heart had turned into a broken mosaic, with missing pieces that seemed impossible to rebuild. She no longer had the strength to dream, because dreaming hurt. Dreaming was a reminder of what she could never have. The silence of the night brought back memories that suffocated her. Memories of everything she had tried and failed, of opportunities that never came, of the times she believed only to be disappointed. Her tears fell quietly, because even crying seemed to have no place in the world. She felt like a spectator in the lives of others. She watched people achieving, celebrating, moving forward, while she remained stuck, trapped in a reality that felt eternal. Time kept passing, but nothing changed. Her life was like a broken clock, always stuck on the same hour, the hour of scarcity. What tore her apart the most was the feeling of worthlessness. She thought she had no value, that she couldn't contribute to anything. The light that once existed in her eyes was gone. All that was left was the shadow of a woman who believed she had lost everything. But life, silent and mysterious, was already preparing something. In the unseen backstage of the universe, seeds were being planted, even though she couldn't see them yet. While she believed she was living the end, in truth, she was about to witness the beginning of something entirely new. It happened on an ordinary day, right in the middle of that repetitive cycle of pain and survival. She was walking through the streets when she found a small community library open. The cold pushed her inside to warm up, never imagining that in that simple space she would find the first spark of change. As she absent-mindedly scanned the shelves, her eyes were drawn to a screen in the back, where a video was playing. The sound was low, but the words seemed to call her, as if they had been spoken directly to her. In the video, a woman was speaking about the power of positive affirmations. She said that words carry power, that what we repeat with faith and intention begins to take shape in reality. To her, it sounded absurd. How could a few sentences change a life marked by so much pain? And yet, something within her urged her to keep listening. The words felt different, unlike anything she had ever heard before. The narrator explained that the universe responds to the energy we send out. If we live focused on lack, we attract more lack. But if we change the way we think and speak, we begin to make room for something new. That idea struck her tired mind like lightning. For the first time in a very long while, a spark was reignited in her heart. She sat down on one of the benches and stayed there, motionless, listening until the very end. The video shared simple yet powerful phrases: I am worthy of an abundant life. I deserve to be happy. I choose to prosper. Each word sank deep into her heart as if seeds were being planted in dry soil. She couldn't explain why it moved her so much. Maybe it was the desperate need to believe in something, maybe it was the hope that there really was a secret capable of transforming destinies. Whatever it was, she couldn't forget what she had heard. The words kept echoing inside her, as if they had been engraved on her mind. That night, lying on her worn-out mattress, she whispered those same affirmations softly to herself. At first, her voice was weak, trembling, as if she didn't believe in what she was saying. But she kept repeating them, insistently, until she fell asleep. For the first time in so long, she closed her eyes with a flicker of hope in her heart. That was the turning point. The moment her life quietly began to shift. There was no instant magic, no immediate change, but something new was stirring inside, a decision to no longer accept the limited reality she had been living. She had discovered the power of affirmations. And from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The next morning, she woke up with those words still fresh in her memory. The cold was still there, the struggles remained the same, but something in the air felt different. She felt a genuine curiosity to repeat the phrases from the video once more. Sitting with her hands clasped, she began, "I am worthy of abundance. I deserve to be happy. I choose to prosper." She repeated each word slowly, trying to believe, even though her reality screamed the opposite. She decided to turn this into a habit. Every day, before leaving the house, she would dedicate a few minutes to repeat her new affirmations. With every repetition, she felt as though a seed inside her was being watered. What once felt impossible now seemed simply distant, but not unreachable. She still had nothing tangible in her hands, but she no longer felt completely empty. With time, she created a small ritual. She wrote the affirmations down on a piece of paper and placed it by her bed. Every night, before lying down, she would read those words aloud. During the day, when sadness threatened to invade her mind, she would close her eyes for a few seconds and silently repeat, "I am worthy. I deserve good things. I choose to prosper." She soon realized that repeating them mechanically wasn't enough. The video had explained that she needed to visualize, to feel, to believe as if it were already real. So when she said, "I deserve to prosper," she pictured her life transformed, a simple but comfortable home, warm food on the table, and a peaceful smile across her face. Instead of only seeing scarcity, she began to project a reality of abundance. This daily exercise became her refuge. When the weight of survival tried to suffocate her, the affirmations were like a breath of life. It was as if she were training her mind to see the invisible, to believe in the impossible. And with each passing day, that training seemed to make her stronger on the inside. Over the weeks, she noticed something changing in her posture. She no longer walked through the streets with her head so low. She no longer avoided people's eyes as much. It was as if, somehow, the affirmations were beginning to redraw her identity. She no longer saw herself only as a survivor, but as someone in the process of being reborn. And for the first time in many years, she felt she was recovering something essential, the ability to dream again. As the days went by, she realized she needed to go beyond words spoken into the air. She decided to take out an old journal, its cover worn from her youth. There, she would begin to record her affirmations every day. On the very first page, she wrote in big letters, "I am worthy of abundance. I deserve to prosper. I choose to be happy." When she finished, she looked at those phrases as if they were a promise to the universe, a silent pact between her and life itself. Every morning at sunrise, she opened the journal and wrote the same affirmations over and over again. At first, it felt like a mechanical exercise, but little by little she began to feel that she was engraving those words not only onto the paper but into herself. Each line she filled was like another brick in the building of a new identity. Beyond writing, she began to describe her desires in detail. She imagined what her transformed life would look like and wrote it down with clarity. She wrote about a small but bright home, about work where she would be valued, about abundant meals and peaceful days. It wasn't just a list of dreams, it was as if she were creating a map for her future. The more she wrote, the more real it began to feel. With every sentence written, a new feeling rose inside her, hope. The journal became her daily companion, a sacred space where she could pour out her pain and, at the same time, water the seeds of her new dreams. It reminded her that even if the world around her hadn't yet changed, something within her was already transforming. In time, she realized that writing and repeating wasn't enough. She also began closing her eyes and visualizing scenes from her future life. She imagined herself walking through her new home, preparing meals, welcoming loved ones. She allowed herself to feel joy as if it were already real. That practice often brought tears to her eyes, because, for the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel happiness, even if only in the realm of imagination. She began calling the journal her manifestation journal. She kept it with care, like a treasure. It was what she leaned on during the days when discouragement tried to return. Every word written reminded her that change was possible, that she was not condemned to live in scarcity forever. This small act, so simple and silent, began to shape a new story. It wasn't just a practice, it was a daily decision not to settle for pain anymore. It was the beginning of a deep dialogue with the universe, where she made it clear, I am ready to change. The days were still challenging, but something inside her was no longer the same. Every morning, as she opened her journal and wrote down her affirmations, she felt her mind grow lighter and her heart more confident. There was no extra food on the table, no new clothes in the closet, but there was an invisible change no one could take away from her, the certainty that she was building a different future. She noticed that even in difficult situations, she no longer reacted with the same despair. When a door closed, instead of feeling as if her world had collapsed, she would take a deep breath and silently repeat, I choose to prosper. I am worthy of abundance. Those words became her shield against fear and her bridge to hope. This daily practice restored something she had lost, faith. Not only faith in God or in the universe, but faith in herself. For the first time in so long, she truly believed she could change her story. And this new confidence showed in her eyes, in her posture, and even in the way she spoke to people. The journal was no longer just an object, it had become a symbol of the new life being born within her. Each filled page was a declaration of victory over the inner voices that insisted she had no worth. Maybe, to someone looking from the outside, there wouldn't seem to be much change. But inside, she knew she was already living a new reality. It was as if she had opened a window and light was slowly beginning to illuminate the dark corners of her soul. And this is where I want to leave you with a special invitation, stay with me until the end of this video. Because just as she discovered the power of words and affirmations, I'm going to share some powerful declarations that can also transform your life. Words that can reignite your hope and open paths you may not even imagine are possible. This was only the first step in her turning point. The best was still to come. The following days brought something she hadn't experienced in a very long time, small signs that her life was beginning to move forward. One morning, as she walked her usual route, she spotted a coin lying on the ground. For many, it would mean nothing, but for her, it was like a silent message from the universe saying, I hear you. She kept that coin carefully, not for its material value, but for the symbolism, that something was finally happening. A few days later, a neighbor who rarely spoke to her asked for help with a simple task. The payment was small, but it meant more than money. It was her first chance to feel useful again, to realize there was still space for her to contribute. Walking back home, her heart felt warm in a way it hadn't in months. The affirmations she repeated daily began to grow stronger in her mind. They were no longer just phrases written in a journal, they had become beliefs shaping the way she acted. When someone looked at her with indifference, she no longer felt invisible. Instead, she reminded herself, I am worthy. I have value. I choose to prosper. And this inner shift seemed to change the way the world perceived her as well. On one of her hardest days, when discouragement almost defeated her, she decided to open her manifestation journal once again and read aloud every page she had written. As she read, tears began to stream down her face, but they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of recognition. For the first time, she was able to see herself as someone who truly could change her life. It was during that same period that a stranger offered her a meal without her even asking. That simple gesture touched her deeply, as if it were yet another confirmation that the universe was responding to her new vibrations. Every detail, every unexpected encounter, felt like an answer to what she had been affirming and believing. Little by little, she began to realize that it wasn't only the world around her that was changing, but especially the way she interpreted what was happening. Before, she would have seen these moments as coincidences. Now, she saw them as clear signs that she was on the right path. This new perspective gave her an inner strength that kept her steady, even on the most difficult days. These small, seemingly ordinary events were like drops of hope falling onto dry soil. And with every drop, something inside her began to bloom: confidence, courage, and faith in the unseen. It was as if she were learning how to walk again, but this time guided by the certainty that she was not alone. Her life hadn't yet taken a grand leap, but it was no longer the same. What once was only survival was now transforming into expectation. She no longer woke up waiting only for pain, she woke up attentive to the signs that might appear each day. And it was precisely this shift in attitude that opened space for greater opportunities to arrive. The universe was responding to her new energy, and her journey of transformation was only beginning. The signs became more frequent, and she began to notice that something truly different was happening. One morning, while passing through a street market, a vendor recognized her from the time she had tried to sell small items there. He called her over and, without expecting anything in return, offered her some leftover fruit. For her, it wasn't just food. It was another confirmation that the universe was sustaining her, little by little, in response to her affirmations. Her heart began to change. Where once there had only been fear and anguish, there was now gratitude. Every simple gesture, every detail of daily life, was seen as a gift. And that gratitude seemed to multiply the signs even more. The more she gave thanks, the more good things began to appear. It was as if she had discovered a key that unlocked invisible doors. On one of the most meaningful days, she received an unexpected invitation to attend a meeting at a small local organization. The gathering was about opportunities for people in vulnerable situations. Months earlier, she might have refused, believing she had nothing to offer. But with the new confidence she had been cultivating, she chose to go. At the meeting, she listened to stories of others who had also gone through difficult times, yet managed to rise again. These testimonies inspired her deeply. She realized she wasn't alone, that there were others fighting the same battles, and that all of them, in their own way, were being transformed by choosing to believe in a new possibility. The most surprising moment came during that meeting, when an older woman approached her and said, "I see a strength in you. Don't give up, because you have so much to achieve." Those words echoed like a prophecy in her heart. It was as if the universe had used that woman to confirm that she was on the right path. In the days that followed, her discipline with affirmations grew stronger. It was no longer just about repeating words, it was about feeling each one. When she said, "I am worthy of abundance," she could feel the warmth of prosperity as if it were already real. When she declared, "I choose to prosper," she imagined herself walking toward a radiant future. That emotion gave life to the words, turning them into fuel to keep going. And it was precisely this inner shift that began to overflow outward. People who once ignored her started greeting her. Suspicious looks were replaced with discreet smiles. Small doors began to crack open, and she no longer doubted this was only the beginning. Her manifestation journal, now more filled, had become the diary of a new life under construction. Each page was living proof that believing, writing, and feeling could truly change the course of a story. What once seemed like a distant miracle was beginning to take shape before her very eyes. The impossible no longer felt so unreachable. The impossible was slowly becoming reality. The first tangible results began to appear, like fruits of a quiet planting she had been nurturing inside. One day, while walking through her neighborhood, she met again the woman she had first encountered at the local organization meeting. This time, the lady invited her to help at a small community workshop. The work wasn't much, but it gave her something priceless, the opportunity to feel part of something. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't just surviving, she was contributing. At the workshop, she reconnected with others who were also seeking to start over, and this strengthened her hope. She realized she wasn't the only one facing hardships, others too were finding new ways to rise. The place was simple, yet filled with stories of resilience, and that atmosphere inspired her to keep moving forward. Every word of encouragement she received felt like another affirmation written directly into her heart. Not long after, a chance came to assist at a small local shop. The job was modest, only a few shifts a week, but it meant everything. It was the chance to show her abilities, to feel useful, to regain a piece of the dignity she had lost. When she received her first payment, she held the bills with such care it was as if she were holding gold. For her, that moment was a milestone, proof that the change which had begun inside was now materializing on the outside. The shop owner noticed something special in her. Though she had little experience, her willingness to learn and the positive energy she carried made all the difference. That positive impression opened the door for new conversations, new lessons, and the possibility of more opportunities. It was as if the doors that once had been tightly shut were now, little by little, starting to open. The most surprising thing was realizing how her own posture was attracting new situations. Before, she walked with her head down, without the courage to look people in the eyes. Now, with affirmations rooted in her heart, she looked forward with more confidence. That simple shift changed the way others saw her. She was no longer just the woman who survived on $1 a day, she was someone radiating a different energy, someone who was beginning to inspire. That week, she wrote in her journal, "Today the universe showed me that I am not alone. I deserve every opportunity that comes my way. I choose to prosper." Those words were written with tears, but this time they were tears of gratitude. Her work, though simple, opened the door for new connections to form. People began approaching her with more respect, with more curiosity. She was no longer seen as invisible, but as someone in the process of growth. What once seemed impossible was now unfolding before her eyes, the affirmations were becoming reality. It was only the beginning, but it was already enough to prove that the power of words could truly transform lives. And she knew there was still so much more to come. The opportunities that first appeared small began multiplying as the weeks passed. At the shop where she worked, she showed such dedication that she was soon asked to take on more responsibilities. The owner noticed her commitment and entrusted her with tasks that once seemed far beyond her reach. That gesture allowed her to feel something she had long forgotten, pride in herself. For the first time in years, she felt her worth being recognized. The money still wasn't much, but it made a difference. She was able to buy simple, clean clothes, and that transformed her appearance. What might seem small to some restored a piece of the self-esteem she had lost. When she looked in the mirror wearing those new clothes, she didn't just see an external change, she saw a reflection of the inner transformation already taking place. People around her began to notice. Neighbors who once walked by indifferently now greeted her. Others, curious, asked how she was managing to improve her life. These questions surprised her, because not long ago, she had been invisible. Now her presence sparked interest. It was as if her energy itself was opening space for new connections to form. Her manifestation journal accompanied every step of this journey. In it, she recorded her daily experiences and renewed her affirmations. She wrote, "I am blessed. I deserve every victory. I am prospering." As she read those words, her heart beat stronger, as if each sentence were fuel pushing her forward. Before long, the woman who ran the community workshop, where she had once helped, invited her to begin teaching some of the tasks to new participants. That opportunity awakened something even greater inside her, the ability to lead. She had never seen herself as someone who could guide others, but there she was, sharing knowledge, earning respect, and being recognized as a reference. Life still had its challenges, but with each passing day, the difference between who she once was and who she was becoming grew clearer. She was no longer just the woman who survived on a single dollar a day. She was someone building a future out of words and faith. This journey taught her that transformation doesn't happen without perseverance. It wasn't enough to repeat phrases for a few days. She had to believe, persist, feel, and act. And that's exactly what she did, and the results began to blossom before her eyes. The small signs were now turning into tangible changes. She no longer lived only by chance, but by real opportunities that appeared as the fruits of her new mindset. And deep within, she knew this was only the beginning of something much greater, because the universe always responds to those who dare to believe. Over time, the limits that once seemed impossible began to dissolve. The job at the small shop brought her a basic sense of stability, but it also gave her something even more powerful: vision. She no longer saw only daily survival, she began to see possibilities beyond what was right in front of her eyes. When she wrote in her journal, her dreams grew bigger. She no longer described only small achievements, now she envisioned a life expanding outward, where she would own her own business and help others prosper. This new vision was born from a habit she had cultivated with discipline. Every night, before sleeping, she would close her eyes and visualize not just a distant future but the details of how it would feel. She pictured a small shop full of movement, customers coming and going, products neatly arranged on shelves, and herself smiling behind the counter. It wasn't just an invented scene, it was a rehearsal for what was to come. Each image was filled with emotion, as if her heart believed long before her eyes could see it. Her affirmations also began to evolve. She no longer said only, "I deserve to prosper." Now she declared, "I am the owner of a thriving business. I attract blessed customers. I inspire prosperity." These words created an atmosphere of certainty within her. It was as if the universe itself was being shaped little by the power of her declarations. And, almost inevitably, opportunities began to align with that vision. A friend mentioned a small, affordable space that was up for rent. At another moment, someone offered her products to resell under accessible terms. These coincidences began to stack up, until it became clear, her dream was becoming tangible. She still didn't have enough money, but she no longer saw that as a block. Instead of saying, "I can't," she started asking, "How can I?" That simple change in perspective opened her mind to new solutions. She wrote down ideas, made calculations, researched, asked questions. She was taking real steps, even if small ones, toward the business she had been visualizing so vividly. Deep down, she knew that every victory started from the inside out. The universe was simply responding to the energy she was sending out. And so she stayed firm in her daily discipline, with her journal by her side and her affirmations repeated like mantras. They were no longer just phrases. They were seeds of a future already beginning to sprout. This inner expansion was reflected in her posture. She walked taller, smiled more often, and spoke with greater confidence. People noticed the change and treated her with a respect she had never experienced before. The impossible was becoming possible before her very eyes. And in her heart, she knew this was only the beginning of the great transformation awaiting her. The first steps toward the dream of owning her own business began modestly, but they carried deep meaning. With the little money she had saved from small opportunities, she bought a few products to resell. It wasn't much, just a few simple boxes, but to her, it represented a beginning. She stored them carefully in a corner of her home and began to see that space as her future shop, even if it was still only a stack of boxes. Every morning, before heading out to her shifts at the shop where she worked, she would look at those boxes and repeat her affirmations: "I am the owner of a thriving business. I attract blessed customers. The universe is opening doors for me." Those phrases echoed as a constant reminder that she was already living what once seemed like pure imagination. The first customers came naturally. Friends, neighbors, and acquaintances who had always seen her with a willing spirit began buying small items from her. Each sale, no matter how small, filled her with gratitude. It wasn't just money, it was confirmation that her effort was paying off. She finally felt recognized and useful, building something that belonged to her. With each experience, she began to learn about organization, pricing, and customer service. She recorded every detail in her manifestation journal, which had now become a business diary as well. There, she wrote down victories, lessons, and of course, new affirmations. Her journal was no longer just a space for dreams, but for concrete achievements. Her determination caught people's attention. The shop owner where she still worked noticed her growing skills and encouraged her to keep going. Some people even said to her, "You have a talent for this, you're going to go far." Those words became fuel, keeping her faith alive even when new challenges appeared. The nights that once were marked by silent tears were now filled with plans. Instead of dwelling on what she lacked, she dreamed of growth strategies, how to expand her sales, how to organize better, how to improve what she already had. This shift in mindset brought a new sparkle to her eyes. Little by little, what had started as a simple desire written in a journal was taking shape. It was no longer just about survival. It was the birth of a project, a business that carried her essence and her faith. There was still much to achieve, but there was no longer room for doubt. She had the certainty that she was on the right path, and the universe confirmed it with every step she took. Slowly, that small beginning began to grow into something far greater than she had ever imagined. The sales, once only occasional, became regular. Customers who bought once returned for more, and even recommended her products to others. Word of mouth began to spread, and her clientele grew naturally, like a river following its course. With the increase in sales, she managed to save an amount of money she had never held in her hands before. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to think about investing in more products and expanding her small setup. That was when she rented a table at a local market, where she could display everything in an organized way. There, surrounded by so many other vendors, she finally felt part of something greater. She felt she had found her place. The market days were intense but filled with energy. She carried with her not only the products but also her unshakable faith. As she arranged the table, she repeated silently in her mind, "I am prosperous. I am abundance. My business grows every day." These words became fuel that kept her steady even in moments of exhaustion. She soon realized she wasn't just selling items, she was offering something more. Her smile, her posture, and her positive energy drew people to her. Customers would say they loved not only the products but the way they were treated. That genuine connection brought many of them back, turning buyers into friends. With the money she had saved, she bought a simple tent to protect her products from the sun and rain. That detail made her stall look even more professional. With every new achievement, she wrote in her journal, "The universe is responding to my declarations. I am the owner of a business that grows every day." Each line she filled was a celebration, a record of the journey that was leaving scarcity behind. In a short time, she was no longer just a survivor. She was an entrepreneur. And that word, which once had felt so distant, now became part of her identity. She began to believe that her story wasn't only about overcoming struggles, it was about inspiring others to believe as well. There were still challenges, but they no longer intimidated her. Every obstacle was seen as an opportunity to learn and grow. Every setback was a chance to rise even stronger. This new mindset was her greatest wealth because it gave her the courage to keep moving forward. What had started as a timid dream written in a journal was now a visible reality. And deep within, she felt that the universe still had so much more to reveal. The growth of her small business brought not only financial gains but also recognition. People became interested not just in the products she sold but in the story behind each achievement. Many asked how she had managed to go from surviving on just $1 a day to owning her own space at the market. Her answer always came with a smile and a phrase that had become her motto: "It all started with words." It was during one of these encounters that she received her first invitation to share her story at a community gathering. At first, she felt afraid. She wasn't used to speaking in public and still carried traces of insecurity. But at the same time, she knew her story could ignite hope in hearts that were facing the same struggles she once endured. So, she chose to say yes. On the scheduled day, she stepped onto the small stage with trembling hands. She looked at the people before her and saw in them the reflection of her own past pain. Taking a deep breath, she recalled the affirmations that had carried her through and began to speak. The words flowed naturally, because they came from truth. She spoke about the days of hunger, about being invisible, about the tears, but also about the moment she discovered the power of affirmations and how everything changed from there. The attentive silence of the audience was the greatest proof that her story was touching hearts deeply. Some people wept, others nodded in agreement. When she finished, she was met with a standing ovation. Emotion overwhelmed her, because for the first time she wasn't just surviving or building a business, she was inspiring. After that gathering, invitations began to multiply. Small groups asked her to share her experience, organizations reached out for her to join conversations, and even local schools invited her to speak to their students. Her voice, once silenced by pain, now echoed as an instrument of transformation. And every time she told her story, she reinforced within herself the certainty that the universe truly responds to what we cultivate in the heart. It was no longer just about her, it had become her life's mission. That's why, if you're following this story right now, know that it's not by chance. If her transformation has touched your heart, write the word abundance in the comments. That will be your declaration that you too believe in a better future. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because there is still so much more inspiration and so many words that can change your life. Her journey was still only beginning, and the recognition she was receiving was yet another sign that words truly have the power to open doors where there once were only walls. What began with simple gatherings soon expanded to horizons she had never imagined. After sharing her story in a few community meetings, a local journalist heard about her and decided to feature her in a small city newspaper. The interview was scheduled at her home, and she welcomed the team with humility, offering the little she had, but with a heart overflowing with gratitude. During the conversation, she shared in detail how she had discovered the power of affirmations, the impact of her manifestation journal, and how daily discipline transformed not only her mind but her entire reality. Her words flowed with emotion, because they were real, born out of her own experience. At the end, the journalist said, "Your story is going to inspire so many people. You have no idea how far this can reach." When the article was published, the response was overwhelming. People she had never met began reaching out to thank her. They said her story reignited their hope, that her words gave them the courage to keep fighting. Some even asked her for tips on how to start practicing affirmations. With joy, she shared everything she knew, because she believed that multiplied prosperity is true prosperity. The impact of the interview opened new doors. She was invited to participate in a radio program, where she shared her story live. There, the voice that once trembled now sounded steady, filled with emotion and confidence. She spoke about the days when she survived on only $1, about the pain of feeling invisible, but also about the strength she found in the words she chose to believe. The reaction was so positive that she received even more invitations for other interviews. In a short time, her image was no longer just that of a woman who fought against scarcity, she became recognized as a symbol of resilience. People began calling her the woman who turned words into miracles. That phrase spread, becoming almost a title that followed her at every new presentation. On social media, she started receiving messages from people in different places. Strangers shared their own struggles and asked for guidance. She replied as best as she could, always encouraging them to practice affirmations and visualization. She believed that if her life had been transformed, countless others could be too. This public recognition brought her a deep sense of responsibility. She no longer carried only her own story but also the hope of thousands of people who saw her as an example. And that motivated her even more to keep sharing, to keep sowing words of abundance and faith. Every interview, every round of applause, every message she received was confirmation that her mission was expanding far beyond what she could have imagined. What began as small gatherings in her community grew to the point of taking her to large stages. She was invited to speak at a regional event on resilience and personal growth. When she stepped into the auditorium and saw the crowd gathered, her heart raced. It was no longer just a personal story, it had become a message capable of touching hundreds of lives at once. She walked onto the stage with the same humility she had always carried, but with a new awareness. She was there to be a channel of hope. The lights shone on her face, and before her sat people with their eyes fixed, hanging on every word. She began by speaking about the single dollar that once defined her daily survival, about the cold nights, about the pain of feeling invisible. Each sentence drew sighs and tears from the audience, because in one way or another, they saw themselves in her story. Then she shared the moment of her turning point, the video on affirmations, her manifestation journal, the small signs that gave her strength until the doors finally began to open. And in the end, she showed that it wasn't just about her, it was about everyone there. She said firmly, "The same power that transformed my life is within you." The applause echoed as confirmation that this message needed to be heard. People approached her after the talk to thank her, some crying, others smiling, all deeply moved. Many said, "You made me believe again." That phrase became an even greater source of fuel for her to keep expanding her mission. From that point on, the invitations never stopped. Universities, churches, organizations, even companies requested her presence. Her voice, once silenced, was now spreading like a beacon. And every new place she visited was another chance to multiply hope. She was no longer the woman who survived on a single dollar a day. She had become a messenger of faith, courage, and transformation. She was living proof that words can become miracles. And if you've made it this far, listening to her story, know that it's not by chance. There is a reason you are hearing this right now. If this journey has spoken to your heart, write the word transformation in the comments. That will be your signal to the universe that you too are ready to step into something new. But this is not the end. Because just as she found strength in the affirmations she repeated every single day, I want to share with you some powerful declarations that could become the key to your own breakthrough. Now is the moment to reveal what carried the transformation of this story, the affirmations. They were the spark that lit the first flame of hope, the fuel that fed faith in the midst of pain, and the doorway that opened space for the miracle. These words are not just pretty phrases, they are seeds that, when spoken with faith and emotion, can blossom into new realities. Take a deep breath, allow each word to sink into your heart, and repeat them silently or aloud as if they were already true in your life. I am worthy of prosperity and abundance. I deserve every opportunity the universe places before me. I choose to prosper in every area of my life. The impossible becomes possible when I believe. I am blessed with resources, ideas, and people who help me grow. I release scarcity and make room for the infinite flow of abundance. I am capable of transforming my reality with faith and discipline. Every day my life is filled with visible and invisible miracles. The universe conspires in my favor and confirms my victory. I am prosperous, I am abundance, I am a miracle in motion. These were the very words she repeated, wrote down, and believed until her life changed. They were the affirmations that carried her when there were still no signs, and they were the ones that sustained her until the fruits became visible. If you long to live your own breakthrough, choose one of these affirmations and repeat it with faith every single day. Write in the comments which one touched your heart the most, because that will be like planting a public seed for the universe to recognize your desire for transformation. And remember, her life changed because she chose to believe in the power of words. Yours can change too. Her story reminds us that no one is condemned to live in scarcity forever. Even when everything seems lost, when life feels reduced to a single dollar a day, there is still a force within us capable of opening unexpected paths. That force is born from the words we choose to believe and repeat, born from the faith we nurture even when everything around us says otherwise. She was not rescued by luck but by the courage to change the way she spoke to herself. The affirmations became more than words, they became seeds that blossomed into abundance, into opportunities, and into miracles. Every line written in her manifestation journal, every repetition through tears, every visualization in the silence of the night was a brick in the building of the new life she now lives. Today, she is no longer just the woman who once survived on a single dollar. Today, she is a symbol of transformation, of faith, and of hope. Her voice echoes as a living testimony that life can turn from the inside out, and that the impossible can, indeed, become reality when we choose to believe. And that very same power is within you. It's in every word you speak, in every thought you nurture, in every choice you make. You too can rewrite your story, just as she rewrote hers. If this message has touched your heart, subscribe to the channel to keep receiving stories and words that can transform your life. Write the word miracle in the comments to declare that you too are ready for your breakthrough. And share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that they are not bound to the past, because the future can always be different. Carry this certainty with you, the same universe that transformed her life is ready to transform yours. All it takes is opening your heart, choosing your words, and believing in the power that already lives inside you.